She thought he was about to do something unforgivable. Her white summer dress was torn at the hem, and the cloth was dark with blood. She was pinned against a dead cottonwood, half sitting, half sliding, with dust stuck to her skin like ash. The rancher knelt in front of her, close enough to make the whole scene look wrong from far away. His hands were rough, steady, too close. The prairie around them was empty, wide and bright, with no house, no wagon road, no neighbor to shout for. Only one horse stood behind them, reins loose, leather creaking in the heat. A thin smear of dust lifted on the horizon, and it moved like it had purpose. Hoofbeats weren't loud yet, but the ground had that faint, distant tremble that your bones notice first. If any man had crested that rise and seen them, he would have sworn the old rancher was hurting her. That was the cruel math of the frontier, and she knew it. Her mouth opened in a sharp gasp, and her eyes stayed on his hands, not his face, because hands told the truth faster than words ever could. His fingers nudged the fabric aside, not gentle, not cruel, just direct, like a man trying to beat the clock. A bruise bloomed purple on her thigh, and a strip of skin was scraped raw, the kind of wound you get when you're dragged. She wanted to pull away, but her leg wouldn't obey. Pain held her down, and fear held her tighter. She whispered the only thing that could stop him, or bind him to her. "If you want to, just do it," she said, voice shaking, eyes wide, daring him to show what kind of man he was. Caleb Rourke didn't flinch. He looked up once, and his gaze was flat as old iron. "That's not what this is," he said. His voice was low, tired, and sure. "Don't move," he said. "I'm stopping the bleeding." The words hit her like cold water. Not comfort, not romance, just purpose. For one terrible second, he reached into his vest, and she thought he was going for a knife. Her hand clenched dirt, her nails dug in. She tasted panic. Then he pulled out a folded cloth, clean but worn thin by years, and a small tin that smelled like alcohol and bitter herbs. He opened it, and the metal made a tiny click, sharp in the quiet. He dabbed the salve on her scraped skin, and it burned hot enough to pull a whimper out of her throat. She hated that sound. She hated needing anyone, but she hated the riders coming even more. Cal's hands worked fast, and he kept his eyes on the wound, not on her body, not on the places a bad man would look. He tore a strip of cloth, wrapped it firm, and tied it off with a knot that made her stomach turn. It was neat. It was practiced. It was the kind of knot lawmen used on restraints, and she'd seen it before. She tried to sit up, and the world tilted. Cal caught her elbow, and then he pulled his own shirt tail loose, using it to cover her leg again, like he was closing a door. The gesture was small, but it spoke louder than any sermon. His shoulders shifted, and he angled his body, putting himself between her and that rising dust without making a show of it. The horse behind them snorted, ears snapping forward. The wind changed, and it carried sound now, faint jingle attack, and a rhythm that wasn't natural. Hooves, 2, maybe 3, coming steady. Before we go one step deeper, I'll tell you the truth the way an old ranch hand would tell it. This story was gathered from frontier accounts and then written again with a few details reshaped. So the lesson lands, and the meaning doesn't get lost in the dust. The images you'll see are made with AI to help you feel the moment, not to trick you. If that isn't your kind of evening, it's all right. Get some rest, drink some water, and take care of that heart of yours. But if you're still here and your gut already feels tight, then you're exactly where you should be. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe now and leave one comment later so I know what kind of truth you can handle. Quick question for you, and answer it honestly. Did you take your walk today, or did the day take you? Cal didn't know the girl's name yet. He only knew she'd been bound because her wrists had faint, angry marks, like iron had kissed her skin. He only knew she'd been running because dust lined her calves and her breathing came in short, controlled sips, the way people breathe when they're trying not to cry out. He only knew someone wanted her back. He glanced at the ground near the dead cottonwood, and his eyes narrowed. In the dirt, half pressed under a boot print, lay a small brass button. bright in the sun. It had a star stamped into it. Not a badge, not the whole thing, just a star on a button, the kind you'd see on a deputy's coat. When a man wanted folks to notice authority. Cal's jaw tightened. He didn't pick it up right away. He let it sit there, like a snake you don't touch until you're ready. The girl followed his gaze, and her face drained of what little color it had left. That's his, she whispered. Cal finally looked at her, not at the wound, not at the torn hem, at her eyes. Who's his? He asked. She swallowed. Bessie, and the sound of it was loud in the quiet. A man with a badge, she said. And men behind him, she added. Her voice cracked on the last word, and she hated herself for it. Cal reached down, picked up the brass button, and closed his fist around it. The metal disappeared in his palm, and so did his patience. The dust on the horizon thickened, and a bird lifted from the grass in a sudden panic, flying low, as if it knew better than to climb. Cal turned his head slightly, listening. The hoofbeats were clearer now, steady, measured, not drunk, not lost. They were hunting. Cal offered his hand again, and this time he didn't wait long. Up, he said. She tried, and her leg buckled. Cal didn't lift her like a hero. He lifted her like a man lifting a fence rail, careful, efficient, no wasted motion. He guided her toward the horse, and he kept his body angled, so anyone watching would see his face first. Not her, not the torn cloth, not the blood. He was thinking ahead, and that scared her almost as much as it reassured her, because thinking ahead meant he believed they had seconds, not minutes. Your ranch, she said, voice thin. You said it's close, Cal said. But close doesn't mean safe. He boosted her to the saddle, and he didn't touch more than he had to. Then he stepped back, and he raised his eyes to the horizon. A glint flashed out there, a hard blink of sunlight on metal, a rifle barrel, or a badge, or both. Then a voice carried on the wind, not loud, but sharp enough to cut through grass and fear. It wasn't a question. It was a claim, Eliza. The voice called. The girl went rigid, like the name had been a hand around her throat. Cal didn't look at her right away. He kept staring at the rise, measuring distance, counting riders by sound. Then he spoke, quiet, so only she could hear. If they ask, he said, you don't speak. She leaned forward, gripping the saddle horn, knuckles white. Her eyes burned, and her voice came out small. What are you going to do? She asked. Cal's fist tightened around the brass button in his pocket. He didn't answer with a promise. He answered with a choice. He stepped in front of the horse, and he lifted his chin toward the oncoming dust, like he was ready to be judged by strangers. Now tell me something, and don't pretend it's easy. When a man can save a girl, but the whole world might think he's the villain, do you still want him to do it? Cal stayed where he was, standing between the horse and the sound, like a fence post that had decided it would not fall today. The dust rolled closer now, thick enough to dull the shine of the grass, and the horse shifted its weight, nervous but trained, like it knew better than to bolt. Eliza kept her eyes forward, just like he told her, hands tight on the saddle horn, jaw locked so hard it hurt. Cal did not reach for his rifle. That choice mattered more than most people would ever know. Men who grab for steel too fast usually end up being remembered for the wrong reason. He waited instead. He listened. The hoofbeats slowed, and voices came with them, low and easy, the way men sound when they think the ground already belongs to them. Cal raised one hand, palm open, not in surrender, just enough to say he was not hiding. A rider broke off from the dust, then another, coats clean, hats set just right. They did not look like bandit. They looked like men who slept indoors. That worried him more. The first rider reined in a few yards away, eyes moving fast, taking in the horse, the girl, the blood on the hem of her dress. Then his gaze settled on Cal, and a thin smile crept in. Afternoon, he said. Cal nodded once. Afternoon. You mind telling me what business you have with that girl? The rider asked. Cal did not answer right away. He bent down instead, slow, careful, and picked up the brass button he had dropped earlier. He brushed dirt off it with his thumb, then held it up so the sun caught the star. This yours? He asked. The smile faded. The rider glanced back at the others, just a flicker, then looked at Cal again. "She belongs with us," he said. Cal turned his head slightly, enough to check on Eliza without making it obvious. Her shoulders were stiff, her breathing was shallow, but she stayed quiet. Good girl, he thought, without meaning to. "Belongs is a strong word," Cal said. The rider shrugged. "We are bringing her back to town. She has some explaining to do." Cal slipped the button into his pocket. "Town has a habit of explaining things wrong," he said. The second rider shifted in his saddle. "You some kind of hero, old man." Cal almost smiled at that. "No," he said, "just a rancher." He gestured toward the open land behind him. "My place is that way. She was hurt. I stopped the bleeding. That is all." The rider laughed once. "Sharp. You expect us to believe that?" Cal met his eyes. "I do not expect anything," he said. The men sat there for a moment, measuring him. The wind carried the smell of sweat and leather and dust. Somewhere close, a meadowlark lifted and flew low. Cal felt the weight of years in his knees, in his shoulders, in the old ache that came when trouble smelled familiar. He had been young once. He had believed then that standing your ground was enough. Life had taught him better. The rider leaned forward. "You let her come with us now, and this stays simple." Cal heard the other meaning under the words. "If you do not, it gets ugly." Cal took a breath. He did not look brave doing it. He looked tired. "She is staying with me tonight," he said. "If you want her in the morning, you come back with someone who carries more than opinions." The rider stared at him. "You are making a mistake." Cal nodded. "That may be. But it will be mine." Silence stretched. The dust settled. The men exchanged looks. Finally, the first rider tipped his hat, not in respect, but in warning. "We will remember this place," he said. Cal watched them turn their horses, watched the dust trail pull away, watched until the land swallowed them again. Only then did he let his shoulders drop. He stepped to the horse and checked the cinch, steadying the animal with a touch it recognized. "You did good," he said quietly. Eliza swallowed. "Are they coming back?" "Yes," he said. "Not today, but soon." He led the horse toward the cottonwoods, keeping his pace slow so she would not jolt. As they moved, he spoke without looking up. "When we reach the ranch, you eat, then you rest. I will check that leg again." She nodded. "Thank you," she said. The word sounded strange in her mouth, like something she'd not used in a while. Cal glanced at her. "You can thank me by telling me the truth later." "Not yet." "Later." She managed a small breath of a laugh. "Fair enough." The ranch came into view after a bend in the land. Nothing special. A low house. A barn that had seen better days. Fences that leaned but still held. Cal helped her down. Careful again. Keeping space where it mattered. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of coffee and old wood. He set her on a chair near the table. "Sit," he said. He poured water, handed it to her, then turned his back to give her a moment. Outside, the sun dipped lower. Evening would bring more than shadows. Cal knew that. As he washed his hands, he caught his reflection in the tin basin. An older man stared back. A man who had hoped to live quiet. He shook his head. "So much for that." He dried his hands and turned. "You have a long night ahead," he said. She looked up. "So do you?" He nodded. Yes, he did. "If you are still with me, now is a good time to settle in. Maybe pour yourself some tea, sit back, and let the rest of this story unfold. If you find yourself wanting to know how it all ends, consider subscribing. It helps more than you might think. And before we go on, tell me something. What time is it where you are right now? And where are you listening from?" The first night at Cal's ranch did not feel safe. It felt quieter than danger usually allows. That kind of quiet has a way of fooling people. Eliza sat at the small table, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of water, staring at the wall like it might start talking back. Cal moved around the room without rushing, doing the same things he had done 1,000 evenings before. He hung his hat. He checked the latch on the back door. He added one log to the stove even though the night was warm, because fire meant light. and light meant fewer surprises. He did not ask her questions yet. That was deliberate. People told the truth more easily when they were not being squeezed for it. Outside, the wind slid through the grass and rubbed against the barn boards, making a low, tired sound, like something breathing nearby. Cal poured himself coffee, strong and black, and leaned against the counter, watching the window. The riders had left. That did not mean they were gone. Eliza shifted in the chair, testing her leg. The pain had dulled, but it had not gone away. Pain like that had a memory. It liked to come back when you least needed it. "You hungry?" Cal asked. "A little," she said. He nodded and set a plate in front of her. Bread, beans, nothing fancy. She ate slowly, like someone who had learned not to trust full stomachs. Cal sat across from her, not too close, not too far, and finally spoke again. "You said town had a man with a badge." He said. She froze for half a second, then kept chewing. "Yes." "Deputy or sheriff?" She shook her head. "I did not wait long enough to find out which." Cal took a sip of coffee. He had known men like that, men who wore authority the way other men wore cologne. Too much and for the wrong reasons. "You run into trouble often?" he asked. She almost laughed. "Only when I stop running." That earned a quiet breath of amusement from him. "Fair answer," he said. They sat like that for a bit, the room settling around them. Cal noticed things without pointing them out, the way she kept her back to the wall, the way her eyes tracked every sound outside, the way she relaxed just a little when he stayed seated. He stood and grabbed a lantern. "I'm going to check the fence line," he said. "You stay here." She hesitated. "What if they come back?" He met her eyes. "Then I will hear them first." That seemed to satisfy her, or at least it was the best answer she was going to get. Outside, the night had cooled and stars spread across the sky like spilled grain. Cal walked the fence slow, rifle slung but untouched, listening for anything that did not belong. All he heard was the land settling and the occasional stamp of a hoof in the corral, but something still felt off. The riders had been too clean, too calm. Men like that did not stop at one warning. When he returned to the house, Eliza was standing, staring at the wall near the door. On it hung an old photograph, edges curled, showing a younger Cal with two other men, arms slung over shoulders, grinning like fools. "Who are they?" she asked. Cal followed her gaze. "Ghosts," he said. That answer carried weight. She turned slowly. "You used to ride with them?" "Yes." "What happened?" Cal considered her for a long moment. Then he answered, "Because sometimes honesty was the price of peace. We trusted the wrong people," he said, "and we learned too late what that cost." She nodded, like that explained more than he had actually said. Silence settled again. Then Eliza reached into her pocket and stopped halfway, glancing at him. "I need to show you something," she said. Cal did not move. "Go on." She pulled out a folded piece of paper, creased and smudged, handled too often. She slid it across the table. Cal unfolded it carefully. It was a copy of a land deed, not the original, but close enough to matter. He scanned it once, then again, slower. The name at the bottom made his jaw tighten. Crowley. He exhaled through his nose. "That explains a lot," he said. "You know him?" She asked. "Know of him," Cal said. "Men like Crowley do not own land. They collect it." She swallowed. "There was another paper," she said. "I did not bring it. That one proves the signature is fake." Cal looked up. "Where is it?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Safe. Not here. Not yet." Cal leaned back in his chair. That was the moment he understood the shape of the trouble. Not just men with badges, not just riders in the dust, but a man who could make the law bend without ever touching it. He folded the deed and slid it back to her. "You picked a bad place to stop running," he said. She met his eyes. "You picked a bad night to be kind." He almost smiled. Outside, far off, a sound drifted through the dark, metal against metal. Faint, deliberate, the unmistakable jingle of tack. Cal stood slowly and reached for the lantern. Eliza's voice dropped to a whisper. "They found us, did they not?" Cal did not answer right away. He lifted the lantern and turned toward the door. He was already counting footsteps in his head. The lantern light cut a narrow path across the yard, yellow and unsteady, like it was nervous about what it might land on. Cal held it low, not because he was afraid of the dark, but because he did not want to announce himself to anyone who might be listening. The sound came again, metal against leather, a horse shifting weight, close enough now that the land no longer hid it. Eliza stayed inside like he told her, though every part of her wanted to follow. She stood near the table, one hand on the chair, the other pressed against her leg, listening the way hunted people learn to listen. Cal stepped off the porch and stopped. He did not move another inch, because the noise had stopped too. That kind of pause was never accidental. He let the lantern hang at his side and spoke into the dark, calm and level. "You are close enough to hear me," he said. "So you might as well answer." Nothing came back at first, just the soft rasp of wind through grass. Then a shape shifted near the corral fence, and a man stepped into the edge of the light. Not one of the riders from earlier. Older, thicker through the chest, hat worn flat, brim pulled low. He did not reach for a weapon. That meant he wanted to talk, or he wanted Cal to reach first. "Evening," the man said. Cal nodded once. "You lost?" Cal asked. The man smiled. "Slow. Depends who is asking." Cal lifted the lantern just enough to see the man's coat. Dusty, buttons mismatched, but clean in a way working men never quite manage. "You were here earlier," Cal said. "Watching." The man did not deny it. "Word travels," he said. "Especially when people start making choices they should not." Cal shifted his weight. The boards under his boots creaked. Old wood complaining about old men. "If you came to warn me, you are late," Cal said. "If you came to threaten me, you are early." The man laughed softly. "I like you, rancher. Most folks get loud right about now." Cal did not smile. "I am tired," he said, "and I do not enjoy company that sneaks." The man took a step closer, then stopped. Inside the house, Eliza held her breath. She could not hear the words clearly, but she heard the tone, measured, careful, the kind men used when they believed violence was optional. For now, the man tipped his head toward the house. "Girl inside seems important," he said. Cal did not turn. "She is hurt," he said, "and she is staying the night. That might complicate things." The man said. Cal shrugged. "Most things worth doing do." The man studied him for a long moment. Then his gaze slid past Cal, to the windows, to the barn, to the fence lines. "You know who Crowley is," he said. Cal felt the name land in his chest like a stone. "I know of him," he said. "That is usually enough," the man replied. "Crowley does not like loose ends." Cal held the lantern steady. "Then you should tell him to tie better knots," he said. The man's smile thinned. "You are standing in the way of something bigger than you." Cal nodded. "That happens sometimes." The man exhaled, like he was disappointed. "Tomorrow," he said. "By morning. This gets decided?" Cal said nothing. The man turned and walked back into the dark. His boots quiet. His horse even quieter. The sound faded. Then the night breathed again. Cal waited a full minute before he moved. Inside. Eliza finally let out the breath she'd been holding. When Cal came back in, he set the lantern down and leaned both hands on the table. "They found us," she said. "Yes," he replied. She watched his face, looking for fear. She did not see it. She saw calculation. "What happens in the morning?" she asked. Cal thought for a moment. Then he said, "Morning decides whether people still believe in rules." She frowned. That did not help. He almost smiled. "Sleep," he said. "That will help." She hesitated. "And if they come back tonight?" Cal glanced at the door. "Then I will hear them," he said. "And if I do not?" He met her eyes. Then they earned it. That answer did not comfort her, but it steadied her. She lay down on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of a place that was not hers. Outside, Cal sat at the table with his coffee gone cold. He took the folded deed from his pocket and studied it again. Crowley. right away. Fake ink trying to pass for honest work. He had seen this before, years ago, with different names and the same ending. Men lost land, men lost pride, sometimes men lost more than that. Cal folded the paper and tucked it away. He did not like being part of stories like this. Stories like this did not care how old you were or how tired. They only cared whether you stepped aside, outside, somewhere far off. A dog barked once, then again. Cal stood and checked his rifle, not with anger, but with respect. Morning was coming, and with it the kind of choice that does not let you stay neutral, because when a man like Crowley decides something belongs to him, the land usually listens. The question was whether Cal Rourke still would. Morning came in pieces, not all at once. First it was the light, thin and pale, slipping through the window like it was unsure it was welcome. Then it was the sound of the wind dying down, the land holding its breath the way it does before people wake up and start making choices. Cal had not slept. He sat at the table with his hat beside him and his coffee untouched, listening to the house settle, listening for anything that did not belong. Eliza slept in short stretches, the kind that come when your body is tired but your mind refuses to stand down. When she finally woke, it was not to noise. It was to silence. That worried her more than shouting ever could. She sat up slowly, testing her leg again. Still there. Still sore. Still hers. The smell of coffee drifted from the other room. Cal stood at the stove, back turned, moving the pot like it was part of a ritual older than both of them. "You were up early," she said. Cal glanced over his shoulder. "You were up late," he replied. That earned a faint smile from her. She pushed herself to her feet and limped toward the table. Outside, the sky was clear, too clear, the kind of blue that made trouble look honest. They ate without much talk. Bread, coffee, a piece of dried meat Cal cut in half and slid across to her without comment. After a while, Eliza broke the quiet. "They said morning would decide things." Cal nodded. "Morning likes to pretend it has authority." She looked at him. "Do you—" He considered that. "No," he said, "but I know how men act when they think they do." He stepped to the window and looked out, down the dirt track. A figure moved, slow and deliberate. Not riding. Walking. Cal felt his jaw tighten. He did not like that. Walking meant confidence. By the time the man reached the fence, Eliza could see him too. Tall, straight-backed, hat clean, boots polished just enough to tell a story. Cal opened the door before the knock came. "Morning," the man said. "Deputy Amos Pike." He tipped his hat. Not to Cal, but toward the house, like he was acknowledging something he already owned. Cal did not return the gesture. "What brings you out so early?" "Deputy," he asked. Pike smiled. "A missing person?" Cal held the door open, not stepping aside. "You are standing on private land," he said. Pike nodded. "I am aware." He leaned just enough to look past Cal, his eyes landing on Eliza. "There you are," he said. Relief, practiced and thin. Eliza did not move. Cal shifted, blocking the view without raising his voice. "She is hurt." Pike glanced down at her leg. "Looks that way." He looked back up. "She is wanted for questioning." Cal folded his arms. "By who?" Pike let out a breath like he'd been waiting for that. "By folks who have lost property. Important folks." Cal almost laughed. "Property has a habit of wandering out here," he said. Pike did not smile this time. "Crowley is willing to be patient," he said. "But patience is not his best quality." Cal felt the name settle heavy in the room. Eliza's fingers curled against the edge of the table. Pike continued, voice smooth. "You hand her over now, and this stays clean. No one has to misunderstand what kind of man you are." There it was, the threat wrapped in courtesy. Cal met his eyes. "You already misunderstand me, deputy." Pike's gaze hardened. "Do not make this harder than it needs to be." Cal stepped forward, closing the distance just enough to be felt. "Hard is when men stop talking," he said. "This is still easy. For now." Pike straightened. "You have until noon," he said. "After that, I bring help. Legal help." He tipped his hat again and turned toward the door. As he stepped out, he paused. "You might want to consider where you want to stand when the town comes knocking." Cal watched him go. Outside, Pike did not walk back. He whistled. A horse answered. That sound carried. Eliza let out a shaky breath. "So that is him," she said. Cal nodded. "That is one of them." She looked at him. "What now?" Cal reached for his hat. "Now we stop pretending this is about questions." He moved to the cupboard and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. He set it on the table and unwrapped it. Inside were papers, old and yellowed. Deeds, maps, notes written in a hand steadier than his own. Eliza frowned. "What are those?" Cal ran a finger along a line on one map. "Proof," he said, "that this land was argued over once before, and won." She looked from the papers to him. "You have been through this." Cal nodded once. "Long time ago. Different names. Same tricks." Outside, the sun climbed higher, burning off the last of the cool. Cal rolled the papers back up. "We are not waiting for noon," he said. She felt her chest tighten. "Where do we go?" Cal met her eyes. Somewhere with more ears and fewer secrets. She understood. Town. As he stepped toward the door, Cal stopped. He listened. Then he smiled, just a little. Eliza followed his gaze to the window. Down the road, a second dust trail was forming, and it was not coming from Pike's direction. Cal did not waste time packing the way people do when they think they are coming back. He packed the way men pack when they are not sure. The papers went into a leather satchel, folded tight and wrapped once more in cloth like they might bruise if treated careless. Eliza watched from the chair, her legs stiff, her mind running faster than her body could keep up. That second dust trail out there did not feel accidental. It felt timed. "Who else is coming?" she asked. Cal slid the satchel over his shoulder. "Men who do not like surprises," he said, "and men who do not like witnesses." He stepped outside and scanned the road again. The trail was thicker now, more than one rider. Not Pike. These moved faster. They did not bother hiding it. "That tells you something," Cal muttered. "What?" she asked. "That they think they already won." He helped her up onto the wagon seat, careful with her leg, then climbed up beside her. The old wagon groaned when he snapped the reins, like it wanted to complain about being dragged back into trouble. As they rolled out, Cal kept his eyes moving, left to right, horizon to fence line. This was not his first bad morning. It was just the first one in a long time. They did not take the main road. Cal cut south, then east, following a shallow draw where the land dipped just enough to hide them from anyone too eager. Eliza held on with one hand and pressed the other against her thigh. The pain was there. Steady now. Like it had decided to stay for the ride. She did not complain. That did not go unnoticed. "You ever driven a wagon before?" Cal asked. "Once," she said. "I broke an axle." Cal gave a short breath that might have been a laugh. "Then you are ahead of most folk." The dust behind them spread wider. Hoofbeats carried now, not loud, but confident. Cal knew that sound. Men riding with permission. Permission was more dangerous than anger. They reached the creek crossing, shallow and slow. Cal drove the wagon through without stopping, letting the wheels wash clean. Tracks mattered. People forgot that sometimes. On the far bank, he turned north. Eliza looked back. "They are still coming." "Yes," he said. "But now they have to guess." They rode in silence for a while. The land opened up again, flatter, emptier. The kind of place where secrets died fast. Eliza broke the quiet. "You did not ask why I have those papers." Cal shook his head. "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because when people feel cornered, they start telling stories instead of truth." She nodded. That felt fair. After another mile, Cal slowed the wagon. Ahead, a small line of cottonwoods marked a resting spot, old and known. He pulled in and stopped. "We wait here," he said. She frowned. "You said town." Cal glanced at her. "I said somewhere with more ears. Not necessarily the first place everyone looks." He climbed down and checked the wagon wheels, more for show than need. Then he leaned against the side, eyes on the road behind them. "You want to know why Pike came himself this morning?" he asked. She did, but she waited, because Pike wants to see faces when he lies. Cal continued, "Paper lies are easier when you cannot see the person reading them." Eliza thought about that. "So Crowley uses Pike. Crowley uses anyone willing to trade sleep for money," Cal said. "That includes men with badges." The sound of riders reached them again, closer now. Eliza's chest tightened. Cal did not move. He watched the cottonwood leaves stir. Counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. He climbed back onto the wagon. "We are not running yet," he said. "Why not?" "Because they expect that." He turned the wagon just enough to face the open land, then waited. The riders crested the rise. 4 men. Not Pike. Different coats, different hats, same purpose. They reined in at a distance. One rode forward, hands loose, rifle across his saddle. Cal raised one hand in greeting. The rider nodded back. "Morning, rancher, morning." "You were moving quick for someone not doing anything wrong." Cal smiled. "Slow?" "My coffee went cold." That got a chuckle from one of the men. The rider squinted toward Eliza. "Girl looks banged up." "She took a spill," Cal said. "Happens." The rider leaned forward. "Crowley asked us to bring her in. Nothing personal." Cal nodded. "It never is." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the brass button, letting it catch the light. "You tell Crowley," he said, "that his friends are getting sloppy." The rider stiffened. "Where did you get that?" "Found it." The rider looked back at the others, then back at Cal. "This does not have to turn into something." Cal met his eyes. "It already has." Silence stretched. The cottonwoods rustled. One of the men shifted, uneasy. Finally, the rider shrugged. "We will let Pike sort it out," he said. "Smart." They turned their horses and rode off, dust curling behind them like a question mark. Eliza exhaled. They left, for now. Cal said. He snapped the reins again and set the wagon moving. "You ever wonder why men like Crowley need so many helpers?" he asked. "'Cause they are afraid to get their own hands dirty," she said. Cal nodded. "And because somewhere deep down, they know paper burns." They rode until the sun climbed higher, until the land ahead showed the faint shape of buildings on the horizon. Town. Not yet close enough to help. Too close to turn back. Cal slowed the wagon and glanced at Eliza. "When we get there," he said, "people will look at you first. They will decide what kind of story this is before you say a word." She swallowed. "What do I do?" Cal met her eyes. "You let them underestimate you. That is when people make mistakes." As the town grew clearer, Cal noticed something else. A wagon already waiting on the road ahead. Parked wrong. Too still. He tightened the reins without saying a word, because whatever waited there had chosen its spot carefully, and that usually meant the next move would not be his. The wagon ahead sat at an angle that made no sense, not broken, not stuck, just waiting. Cal slowed his team without saying a word, easing the reins the way you do when you want the animals calm, even if your own pulse is not. Eliza felt it before she understood it. That quiet shift, the kind that tells you the road is about to ask a question you may not like. "Who stops a wagon out here like that?" she asked. "Someone who wants to be seen," Cal said. "Or someone who wants us to stop." He guided the wagon a little to the left, enough to give himself room. The other wagon did not move. No driver in sight. No horses grazing. That bothered him most. Cal brought his team to a halt well short of it. He stayed seated, canyoning slow, fence lines, low rise, dry wash. Nothing obvious. That usually meant something was hidden. "You stay where you are," he said. Eliza did not argue. Her hand tightened on the seat rail. Cal climbed down, boots hitting dirt with a soft thud. He left the rifle where it was. That choice was not about mercy. It was about reading the room. He walked forward alone, lanternless in the daylight. One step at a time, the wagon ahead was empty. No driver bench worn down. No bed marks. Too clean. He circled it once. That was when he heard breathing. Not close. Off to the side. Controlled. A man stepped out from behind the wagon. Hands open. Another followed. Then another. 3 this time. Different men again. Different hats. Same eyes. You move around a lot for a man your age, one of them said. Cal stopped. He kept his voice even. Habit. The man smiled. Crowley likes habits. They make people predictable. Cal glanced back at his own wagon. Eliza watched him, eyes wide but steady. Good. She was learning. What do you want? Cal asked. The man shrugged. Conversation. The others spread a little, not enough to rush him, just enough to remind him they could. Cal felt the old ache in his left shoulder, the one that showed up when trouble got personal. You could have talked back at the ranch, Cal said. The man shook his head. Too many ways that ends wrong. Out here is cleaner. Cal nodded. Cleaner always means quieter. One of the men laughed. You are sharp. Crowley appreciates that, but he also appreciates cooperation. Cal shifted his weight. So does the land, he said, but it does not get asked often. The man took a step closer. You have something that does not belong to you. Cal thought of the papers, of ink pretending to be honest, of men who thought owning words meant owning ground. I have a girl who is hurt, Cal said, and a road to town. That is what I have. The man's smile faded. Do not make this harder. Cal met his eyes. Hard is pretending you are not doing this. The paws stretched. Wind lifted dust around their boots. A hawk circled overhead. Patient. Finally, the man raised a hand. Enough. He looked back toward Cal's wagon. The girl can walk. Cal did not move. No. The man sighed. Then we wait. He nodded to one of the others. The man reached behind the wagon and pulled something into view. Rope. Not coiled neat, used. The sight of it made Eliza's stomach drop. Cal felt the shift before she did. Fear changes the air. That rope is not needed, Cal said. The man shrugged. Sometimes it is. Cal's voice stayed calm. You are thinking small. The man raised an eyebrow. Explain. You put that rope on her, Cal said, and this stops being about paper. It becomes about something else, something louder. The man hesitated. Crowley does not like loud. Cal almost smiled. That is the first true thing you've said. The man studied him again. Then he glanced back down the road toward town. Dust hung there too now. Another trail. Different direction. Someone else moving. Cal saw it. So did they. The man cursed under his breath. That will be Pike, or someone like him. Cal nodded. And he will want to be in charge. The man's jaw tightened. Crowley hates sharing. Cal took a step back. Slow. So do people who still believe in rules. The men exchanged looks. They had not planned on this. Cal knew the type. They worked best when the road was empty, when witnesses were unlikely. Town changed the math. The man with the rope finally tossed it back into the wagon. We will let Pike handle this, he said. Cal tilted his head. You already tried that? The man ignored it. This is not over. Cal nodded. It rarely is. The men mounted up, movement sharp now. Irritation showing through. They rode off hard, dust kicking high, not bothering to hide their direction. Eliza finally breathed again. Cal walked back to the wagon. He did not rush. He did not look shaken. But when he climbed up, she saw his hand tremble once before he steadied it. That was new. They almost tied me, she said. Almost is not the same as did, Cal replied, but it gets closer every time. He snapped the reins and set them moving again. Town loomed larger now. More buildings, more smoke, more eyes. That should have helped. It didn't feel like it would. When they reached the edge of town, Cal slowed. People moved in the street. A wagon unloading, a man sweeping dust that would be back in an hour. Life going on like trouble was something that happened to other folks. Cal looked at Eliza. Once we roll in, he said, things speed up. Words get twisted. Stories get chosen. She nodded. I know. He held her gaze. If anyone asks, you say nothing unless I nod. She swallowed. What if they do not ask? Cal looked ahead. Then we are already in worse shape than we think. As they crossed into town, Cal felt it, that subtle shift, the way eyes followed them too long, the way conversations paused somewhere ahead. A bell rang, not an alarm, just time being marked. Cal guided the wagon toward the center street, and that was when he saw who was waiting near the hitching rail. Deputy Pike, hat on, hands folded. Watching them arrive like he had been counting the minutes, Cal tightened the reins, because the next few moments were going to decide whether this stayed a dispute or turned into a spectacle. Deputy Pike stood by the hitching rail like he had been carved there, hat straight, boots clean, hands folded easy in front of him like the whole town was his office and the street was his desk. Cal guided the wagon forward at a slow walk, not giving Pike the satisfaction of seeing him hurry. Eliza sat stiff beside him, eyes forward, jaw tight, doing exactly what he told her. Say nothing, wait for the nod. That is harder than it sounds when every eye in town starts leaning your way. People were watching, not openly, not like a crowd at a show, more like neighbors peeking through curtains, pretending they were busy, while their attention stayed locked on the wagon. Cal stopped a few feet short of Pike and set the brake. He did not climb down right away. He let Pike make the first move. Pike smiled up at him. Morning, Mr. Rourke. Cal nodded once. Deputy. Pike glanced at Eliza. Miss Hart. Eliza's shoulders went rigid at the name. Cal felt it in the air, like a wire pulled tight. He did not nod. He did not speak. Pike stepped closer, voice calm, loud enough for nearby folks to hear. You look like you've had a rough day, miss. No answer. Pike turned to Cal, still smiling. I told you noon, Mr. Rourke. You always were impatient. Cal finally climbed down, slow and steady, and stood between Pike and the wagon. I came early, Cal said. So you would not bring your friends? Pike chuckled. Oh, I brought them anyway. He flicked his eyes to the side. Two men stood near the general store, not pretending very hard to be shopping, not lawmen, just help. That told Cal everything. This was not about keeping the peace. It was about making a point. Pike leaned in a little, lowering his voice so it sounded private, even though it was not. You are making yourself look bad. Cal, old man, and a young girl, out on the prairie, then in your house all night. People talk. Cal kept his face still. Let them, he said. Pike sighed like Cal was being stubborn on purpose. We can do this simple, he said. She comes with me, you go back to your ranch, and nobody has to misunderstand anything. Cal's eyes stayed on Pike. Words like misunderstand always sounded polite until you heard what they were really meant to do. Eliza shifted on the wagon seat. Cal did not nod. Pike's smile thinned. He raised his voice again. Putting on a show for the town? Miss Hart is wanted for questioning about stolen documents and a violent incident near Julesburg. If you have nothing to hide, miss, you will come peacefully. A woman across the street paused with a basket in her hands, watching. A man by the water trough turned his head. The air changed. That was Pike's favorite trick. He did not arrest you with his hands first. He arrested you with other people's eyes. Cal lifted his chin slightly, a small movement, barely a signal. Eliza did not speak. Good. Pike looked irritated for half a second, then smoothed it away. Mr. Rourke, he said, are you refusing to cooperate with the law? Cal held Pike's gaze. And I'm refusing to hand over a wounded girl to a man who drops brass buttons in my dirt. Cal said. Pike blinked. That was the first crack. Not big, but real. You found a button? Pike said. Cal nodded. Star on it. Funny thing, it showed up right where my fence line is. Same morning you show up smiling. Few people nearby shifted. Not much, but enough. Pike's jaw tightened. You are confused, Mr. Rourke. Cal shrugged. Then clear me up. Pike took a step closer, voice low again. You do not want to do this in front of folks, he said. Cal kept his tone even, then stopped talking so loud. That earned a small laugh from someone down the street. Quick and nervous, Pike heard it. He did not like it. He turned sharp, scanning for the source, and then looked back at Cal. "This girl is trouble," he said. "She brings men like Crowley into your life, and you will not like how that ends." Cal's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Men like Crowley do not need invitations," Cal said. "They just need weak doors." Pike's eyes narrowed. "You are not thinking straight." Cal leaned in just a fraction. "I am thinking clearer than I have in years." "Deputy," for a moment, Pike looked like he might reach for Cal. Then he remembered the street, the witnesses, the fact that his power worked best when he looked calm. So he took a different route. He turned and waved one hand, casual, like he was ordering lunch. "Bring the wagon around," he said to his men. Eliza's breath caught. Cal did not move. He did not grab his rifle. He did not throw a punch. Not yet. He just spoke. Steady, loud enough for the closest ears. "Deputy Pike," Cal said. "If you lay a hand on her in this street, you will have to explain it to more than me." Pike smiled, thin and mean. "Explain," he said. "To who?" Cal answered without looking away. "To the people who still know the difference between law and bullying." That landed. A man near the saloon shifted his stance, watching Pike now instead of Cal. A woman stepped closer to her doorway, face tight. Pike felt the attention move, and it made him angry. He covered it with a smile. "Fine," he said. "We will do this proper." He reached into his coat and pulled out folded paper. A notice, maybe a warrant, maybe something that only looked like one. He held it up like a preacher holds a Bible. "Miss Hart is coming with me," he said. "And Mr. Rourke is interfering." That is when Cal saw it. The paper had a signature at the bottom. Not Pike's, not a judge's. A name written bold and confident like it owned the page. Crowley. Eliza saw it too, and her hand flew to the edge of the seat. Cal felt the street tilt, because if Crowley's name was already on that paper, then this was not a local misunderstanding anymore. This was a machine, already turning, and Cal was standing in front of it with nothing but his reputation. The question was how many teeth the machine had, and whether it was about to bite. Pike held the paper out like it weighed more than it did. Not because it was heavy, because names have weight out here. Cal did not reach for it. He did not need to. He had already seen the signature, bold and confident, sitting at the bottom like it owned the street. Crowley. That name moved faster than horses' squirm. It moved through banks and through rail offices, through back rooms where men convinced themselves they were respectable. Pike watched Cal closely now. He was enjoying this part. "You see, Mr. Rourke," Pike said, voice calm and practiced. "This is no longer a personal favor. This is business." Cal nodded slowly. "Business is usually where people hide their worst behavior," he said. A few heads nearby tilted. Someone coughed. The street felt tighter than it had a moment ago. Eliza stared at the paper, then away, like looking too long might make it real. Pike folded the notice and slipped it back into his coat. "Now," he said, "we can do this two ways." Cal waited. He had learned long ago that men like Pike talked themselves into mistakes if you gave them time. The first way? Pike continued. "You step aside, I help her down, and we walk to the office, quiet, clean. No fuss." He paused, then added, "The second way is louder." Cal glanced up and down the street. A few men had drifted closer, not forming a crowd, just close enough to feel included. That was how these things started. "What happens to her?" Cal asked. "Once you walk her away?" Pike smiled thin. "She answers questions." Cal kept his voice level. "And after that?" Pike shrugged. "Depends what she says." Cal nodded. That was honest enough to be dangerous. He turned slightly, just enough to look back at Eliza. She met his eyes. There was fear there. But there was something else, too. Trust. That scared him more. Cal faced Pike again. "You are not taking her," he said. The words were simple. They landed hard. Pike blinked, surprised. Then his expression hardened. "You are interfering with the law," he said. Cal shook his head. "No, I'm interfering with you." That got a murmur from someone near the saloon. Pike heard it. He did not like losing control of sound, and he stepped closer to Cal, lowering his voice. "You think this town will side with you," Pike said. "Old rancher. Young girl. You are standing in the wrong story." Cal leaned in just enough to be heard. "Stories change when people see the ending coming." Pike straightened. "Enough of this." He turned sharply and raised his hand. Two men stepped forward from the edge of the street. Not deputies, just hired help. Broad shoulders, empty eyes, Eliza's breath caught. Cal felt the shift in the air. The moment when talk gives way to movement. He placed one hand on the wagon rail, grounding himself. Before Pike could speak again, a voice cut through the street. "Deputy." It was not loud. It did not need to be. Everyone turned. A man stood near the general store, hat in hand, sleeves rolled, ledger tucked under one arm. Older, thin, eyes sharp in a way that did not miss much. "Morning, Mr. Stokes," Pike said. A touch too quick. Edgar Stokes nodded once. "Morning." He looked at the wagon, at Eliza, at Cal, then back to Pike. "That is a Crowley paper you are waving around," Edgar said. Pike stiffened. "It is an official notice." Edgar shifted the ledger under his arm. "Funny thing about official notices," he said. "They usually come through my desk." Cal felt a small spark lighten his chest. Not hope, not yet, just possibility. Pike smiled again, but it was strained. "This matter does not concern freight clerks," he said. Edgar shrugged. "Everything concerns freight clerks eventually. Paper passes through hands. Ink leaves tracks," and he looked at Cal. "Morning, Cal." Cal nodded. Edgar looked back to Pike. "You planning to file that, deputy?" Pike hesitated. "Just a beat. Just long enough." "I will," Pike said. Edgar smiled. Mild. "Then I will be expecting it. 'Cause if Crowley is moving paper without routing it proper, the railmen will want to know. And they ask louder questions than I do." The street went quiet. Even Pike's men shifted now. Crowley liked power, but he hated attention. Pike stared at Edgar, jaw tight. "This is not your concern," he said. Edgar nodded. "Then it probably should not be mine. But it is, because if this turns into a mess, people will start asking who signed what and when. And I keep records." Cal watched Pike do the math. Fast, ugly, not finished. Pike took a breath and forced a smile. "We will handle this later," he said. He turned to Cal. "This is not over." Cal nodded. "It never is." Pike stepped back, signaling his men away with a sharp flick of his hand. They obeyed, but not happily. As Pike walked off, the street slowly returned to motion. Voices picked back up. A wagon rolled past. Life resumed, thin and fragile. Eliza exhaled, long and shaky. Cal stayed where he was. He knew better than to relax too soon. Edgar stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You stirred a nest you cannot see yet." Cal met his eyes. "I figured." Edgar glanced toward the direction Pike had gone. "Crowley does not like being slowed down." Cal nodded. "Then he better get used to it." Edgar hesitated. "If you have something real," he said, "something that proves he is pushing paper, he should not be—" Cal thought of the satchel, of the maps, of the missing second document. "I might," he said. Edgar's eyes sharpened. "Then you should be careful who you show it to." Cal watched Edgar walk away, ledger under his arm. He climbed back onto the wagon and picked up the reins. Liza looked at him, voice low. "What just happened?" Cal looked ahead. "We bought time," he said, "but time like that is expensive." As they rolled away from the center street, Cal noticed something else. Across the way, near the livery, a man he did not recognize stepped into the shade. He was not watching Eliza. He was watching Cal. And when their eyes met, the man smiled like he already knew how this would end. They did not go far. Cal guided the wagon off the main street and into a narrow side lane where the noise of town thinned out. replaced by the steady sounds of work and waiting. A hammer rang somewhere, a door creaked, a dog barked once, then went quiet. Eliza let her shoulders drop for the first time since they rolled in, but only a little. She'd learned better than to believe in clean escapes. Cal pulled the wagon to a stop behind a feed store and set the brake. He stayed seated a moment, listening. Town had its own rhythm, and he knew when it changed. Right now it was pretending nothing had happened. That never lasted. "You did good back there," Cal said, keeping his voice low. Eliza looked at him. "I did nothing." Cal shook his head. "You did exactly what you needed to do." "That counts." She nodded, though her hands were still tight in her lap. "Who was that man with the ledger?" she asked. "Edgar Stokes," Cal said. "Keeps freight records. Tracks paper better than most lawmen track people." She frowned. Why would he help us? Cal thought about that. Men like Edgar do not help people. They help patterns. Crowley breaks patterns. That makes clerks nervous. Eliza considered that. "So he is not on our side." Cal smiled faintly. "Not yet. That is usually safer." Cal climbed down and checked the harness more out of habit than need. As he did, he felt it again, that sense of being watched. He glanced toward the livery across the lane. The man he had seen earlier was still there, leaning in the shade, hat tipped low, pretending to study a horse that was not his. The man looked up. Their eyes met. The man smiled again. Not friendly, not threatening. Certain. Cal felt something old stir in his chest. Recognition without a name. He finished checking the harness and climbed back up. Eliza followed his gaze. "You see him too?" she asked. Cal nodded. "That makes it worse." She swallowed. "Who is he?" "Someone Crowley trusts to wait," Cal said. The wagon rolled again, slow and deliberate. They moved through the back of town, past sheds and loading docks, past places where business happened without witnesses. Cal kept them moving until the buildings thinned and the land opened just enough to breathe. He pulled up near a low hill where scrub grass met a stretch of rail line, not close enough to be obvious, not far enough to be alone. "Here," he said. Eliza shifted carefully as he helped her down. Her leg protested, but she stayed upright. "I am tired of running," she said quietly. Cal looked at her. "Running is not the same as moving," he said. "Right now we are moving." He sat on a crate near the wagon and took the satchel from under the seat. He set it between them but did not open it yet. "You told me there was another paper," he said. She nodded. "The one that proves the signature is fake. Where is it?" She hesitated, then looked toward the town. "With someone I trusted," she said. Cal raised an eyebrow. "Past tense." She sighed. "A woman named Mary ran a boarding place near the trail. She helped me get out when things turned bad. She did not want to carry it into town. Said paper like that draws flies." Cal nodded. "Mary Caldwell." "I know the place." He thought for a moment, then his jaw tightened. "That boarding house sits right on a route Crowley uses." Eliza's face drained. "You think he found her?" "I think he's looking," Cal said. "And when Crowley looks, he usually finds something." The weight of that settled between them. Eliza pressed her fingers together. "If they get that paper," she said, "then all we have is noise." Cal finished. And noise favors men with badges." He stood and paced once, slow, then he stopped. "There's another way," he said. Eliza looked up. Cal met her eyes. "We take the long road, not back to my ranch, not straight through town. We head toward Fort Laramie." She frowned. "The fort?" Cal nodded. "Not for soldiers, for clerks, mail. Records that do not belong to Crowley yet." Eliza let out a breath. "That is far, far enough to change who hears the story first," Cal said. She leaned back against the wagon, thinking, "They will follow." Cal nodded. "Yes, but they will not know which lie to tell until it is too late." They packed quickly, not in a rush, in a way that did not draw eyes. Cal checked the sky. Still clear, still honest looking. That meant nothing. As they prepared to move, the sound of boots on dirt reached them. Cal turned. The man from the livery stood at the edge of the hill now, closer than he should have been. Hands at his sides. No rush. You move around a lot. Rancher, the man said. Cal did not answer right away, but he studied the man. Late 30s, hard eyes, scar near the jaw that had healed wrong, and a calm that came from having done unpleasant things before. You have my name, Cal said. The man smiled. Crowley keeps lists. That did not surprise Cal. What do you want? He asked. The man shrugged. To pass along a message, he took a step closer. Crowley says this does not have to get ugly. Cal almost laughed. That is generous of him. The man's smile thinned. He says if the girl comes back quietly, he will forget your part in this. Eliza stiffened. Cal shook his head. Tell Crowley he already remembers me, Cal said. The man studied him, then nodded. Fair enough. He turned to leave, then paused. You know, Rancher, he said, this ends the same way most things do, with people wishing they had stayed out of it. Cal watched him walk away. He waited until the man disappeared between buildings. Then he climbed onto the wagon and took the reins. Eliza looked at him. What did he mean? Cal stared down the road that led out of town. He meant that Crowley is done waiting, Cal said. And when a man like that stops waiting, he starts choosing who gets hurt first. The wagon creaked as it rolled forward, and somewhere behind them, a bell rang. Not for time, for attention. The kind that does not fade once it starts. The road out of town felt narrower than it had an hour earlier, not because it changed. Because the world around it had decided they were no longer just passing through. Cal kept the wagon at a steady pace, not rushing, not crawling, letting the wheels speak the language of ordinary travel. Men who hurried drew eyes. Men who moved like they belonged often slipped through. Eliza sat beside him, wrapped in his spare coat now, the fabric too big for her, the sleeves hanging past her hands. She did not look back. She did not need to. She could feel it, the way attention stretched behind them like a wire pulled tight. They cleared the last cluster of buildings, and the land opened into long grass and shallow dips that rolled toward the horizon. The town noise faded fast, too fast. Cal did not like that. He listened for hoofbeats. He heard none. That worried him more. Crowley did not always send riders. Sometimes he sent patients. You ever notice? Cal said. That trouble likes to wait until you think you are free. Eliza nodded. It likes corners, she said. That surprised him. He glanced at her. You have been doing this a while. Longer than I wanted, she replied. The wagon rolled on. A mile out, Cal eased the reins and guided them toward a stand of scrub that broke the line of sight back to town. He stopped there and climbed down, stretching his legs. He walked around the wagon once, slow, checking nothing and everything. Eliza watched him. You think they're following? She asked. Cal shook his head. Not yet, she frowned. That does not make me feel better. It should not, he said. Following means reacting. Crowley prefers setting the board. Cal climbed back up and took the reins again. We will take the long way, he said. Stay off the obvious tracks. She nodded. They traveled in that quiet way people do when talking feels like it might jinx something. The sun slid lower, and shadows grew longer, pulling at the land like stretched fingers. They crossed a dry wash and climbed out on the other side. That was when Cal heard it. A sound too soft to be chance. A wheel. Not theirs. He slowed. The sound slowed too. Eliza stiffened. Do not turn around, Cal said. He shifted the wagon just enough to glance off the edge of his vision. Far back, just where the land dipped again, a wagon moved. Same pace, same line, keeping distance. Not hiding, not closing. That is not Pike, Eliza said. No, Cal agreed. That is Crowley. She looked at him. You said he did not like to get his hands dirty. Cal nodded. That does not mean he does not like to watch. The wagon behind them stayed back, patient as a shadow. They traveled another half-mile like that. The space between them unchanged. Cal felt the old weight settle in his chest. This was not a chase. This was pressure. Crowley was telling him something. I can wait longer than you, Cal guided the wagon off the track and into a shallow draw, using the land to break sight. When they stopped, Eliza finally turned. The other wagon had slowed too. Still there, still watching, Cal exhaled slowly. "This is where he wants us," Cal said. She swallowed. "Out here? Alone?" He shook his head. "Not alone. Not yet." He reached into the satchel and pulled out one of the maps, spreading it across his knee. "Here," he said, tapping a finger. "If we keep west, we can reach the river before dark. Water washes tracks. Noise hides movement." She studied the map, and if they follow, Cal folded the map. Then they show their hand. As if on cue, the wagon behind them stopped. A figure climbed down. One man, no rush. No weapon visible. He stood there a moment, then began walking toward them. Cal did not move. He did not reach for the rifle. He waited. The man stopped a few yards away. He was older than Cal had guessed earlier, late 50, and gray at the temple. Suit jacket dusty but well made, boots that had not seen much mud. "Mr. Rourke," the man said. Cal nodded. "You know me." The man smiled. "Crowley makes it his business to know people who complicate his life." Eliza held her breath. Cal kept his eyes on the man. "You came a long way to talk," Cal said. The man shrugged. "Crowley prefers to speak face to face when stakes rise." Cal almost laughed. "Crowley prefers to let other men speak for him." The man accepted that. "Perhaps. But today he wanted you to hear it clearly." He gestured lightly. "You are tired. You have land to worry about. You do not want to be remembered as the man who ruined himself over someone else's mess." Cal felt Eliza tense beside him. He answered without looking at her. "I'm already remembered for worse things," he said. The man studied him. "Crowley is willing to be generous. He will forget the papers, forget the town scene, even forget the girl. If she comes back." "Quiet. Tonight." Cal shook his head. "That is not generosity." "Well, he said that, so that is appetite." The man sighed. "You are making a mistake." Cal leaned forward slightly. "Mistakes are when you think you can own people." The man straightened. "Then this stops being a conversation." Cal nodded. "It already has." The man took a step back. "Last chance." "Mr. Rourke." Cal finally looked at Eliza. She met his eyes. There was fear there, but there was no plea. That mattered. Cal faced the man again. "Tell Crowley this," he said. "I am done stepping aside." The man held his gaze a moment longer. Then he nodded. "Very well." He turned and walked back toward his wagon. As he climbed up, he paused. "You know," he said, "Crowley always wins eventually." Cal watched him go. The wagon rolled back, distance widening again. Eliza let out a breath she had been holding. "What happens now?" she asked. Cal picked up the reins and clicked his tongue softly. "Now he decides how much he's willing to break to get what he wants." The wagon moved forward, toward the river, toward night. And behind them, the second wagon began moving again. But this time, it was closer, just enough to remind them. The waiting was over. Night came down fast once they reached the river. Not all at once. First the air cooled, then the colors drained out of the land, leaving shapes in movement where certainty used to be. Cal guided the wagon down toward the bank, choosing a spot where reeds grew thick and the water bent around a shallow curve, the kind of place that swallowed sound and tracks. They did not speak while they worked. Cal unhitched the team and led them upstream, letting the hooves churn water and mud before circling back on stone. Eliza watched and learned. Survival had a way of teaching without words. When the wagon was hidden and the horses settled, Cal finally sat on a flat rock and rubbed his hands together. Slow and deliberate. That waiting wagon had not rushed. That bothered him. Crowley rushing meant mistakes. Crowley waiting meant planning. Eliza sat beside him, wrapped in the coat again, eyes on the dark water sliding past. "Do you think he will try tonight?" she asked. Cal shook his head. "No." Tonight he lets the river work on your nerves. She frowned. That is worse. Cal nodded. Yes, the fire they built was small, more glow than flame, hidden low between stones, enough to warm hands, not enough to announce them. Cal poured coffee from a dented pot and handed her the mug. She took it with both hands. You always this calm? She asked. He took a sip of his own. No, just used to not showing it. That earned a quiet breath of a laugh from her. They sat for a while, listening to water and night sounds. An owl called. Something splashed farther upstream. Cal kept his eyes moving. Not searching, remembering. You said Crowley always wins eventually, Eliza said. Cal looked at the fire. People say that about storms, too. She waited. Storms win because folks build in the wrong places, Cal said. She thought about that. So, what do we do? Cal reached into the satchel and pulled out the deed again. He spread it on his knee and tapped the name at the bottom. We stopped playing on his ground. She leaned closer. How? We make him explain his paper where it cannot hide, Cal said. She looked at him. Fort Laramie, he nodded. Not for soldiers, for clerks, for ledgers that talk to each other, for men who write things down because they believe paper remembers longer than threats. Eliza stared into the fire, and if he stops us before that, Cal folded the paper and tucked it away. Then he shows everyone who he really is. Silence settled again, not peaceful, but steady. Then Cal heard it, a sound that did not belong, not water, not wind. He held up a hand. Eliza froze. Far across the river. A light flickered once, then again, covered, uncovered, signal. Cal's jaw tightened. He leaned close to Eliza. Do exactly what I say, he whispered. She nodded. He stood slowly, keeping low, and moved toward the wagon. He did not grab the rifle. He grabbed the lantern. That was a choice. He lifted it high and let the light show, just for a moment. Across the river, the answering light steadied. A figure stepped forward. Just one, hat off. Hands visible. Cal let the lantern hang. He spoke loud enough to carry over water. You are late, he said. The figure's voice came back calm and familiar. So are you. Eliza's breath caught. Cal did not turn. He knew the voice. He had hoped not to hear it again. The man stepped closer to the bank, moonlight catching his face. Older now, thinner, but the eyes were the same. You always did like to stand your ground, the man said. Cal closed his eyes for half a second. Then he opened them. I did not expect Crowley to send you, Cal said. The man smiled. Tired. He did not send me. I volunteered. Eliza looked between them, confused. Cal spoke without looking at her. Stay where you are. The man across the water shifted his weight. It has been a long time, Cal, he said. Long enough to forget how this ends. Cal's voice stayed even. You ended it once already. The man winced. That was not fair. Cal nodded. Neither was what came after. The water slid between them, quiet and uncaring. The man took a breath. Crowley is done waiting, he said. He wants this finished clean, tonight if possible. Eliza felt the cold crawl up her spine. Cal met the man's eyes across the river. And you? Cal asked. What do you want? The man hesitated. Then he said, I want you to walk away before this costs more than land. Cal looked back at the fire, at the wagon, at the girl who had trusted him without knowing his past. He looked back across the water. You picked the wrong night to ask that, Cal said. The man nodded slowly. I was afraid you would say that. He stepped back into the dark. The light vanished. The night closed in again. Eliza whispered, Who was that? Cal did not answer right away. He watched the river. He listened to the silence that followed it. Then he said quietly, That was the last man I ever trusted with my back. And if Crowley sent him, then the next move will not be words. The night did not give them rest after that. It pressed in closer, heavier. Like it had decided to stay and listen. Cal did not sit back down. He moved with purpose now. Quiet and sure. Gathering things that mattered and leaving the rest where it lay. The lantern was covered. The fire was reduced to coals and scattered with sand. Anything that said we were here was erased, or at least argued with. Eliza watched him work, her mind racing faster than the river. "That man," she said softly. "He knew you." Cal nodded once. That was all he gave her. She stood and followed him toward the wagon, careful with her leg, but refusing help. "I'm not asking to pry," she said. "I just need to know what kind of danger we're in." Cal paused, hands on the wagon rail. "The kind that does not end when you outrun it," he said. That seemed honest enough. They moved away from the river before first light, staying low, letting the sound of water fade behind them. Cal chose ground that bent and folded, places where the land broke sight lines and hid movement. He knew these paths, not because he used them often, because once, a long time ago, he had needed them. Eliza finally spoke again as the sky began to lighten. "You trusted him once," she said. Cal kept his eyes forward. "Yes." "What happened?" Cal took a breath. He did not look angry when he answered, just older. "We were hired to guard a freight run," he said. "Simple job. Paper said one thing, reality said another. Crowley was behind it even then, though his name was not as loud. Someone panicked. Someone fired when they should not have. And I did not stop it." Eliza felt the weight in his words. "People died," she said. Cal nodded. "Wrong people." Silence followed, not awkward, just heavy. They reached a ridge as the sun broke free of the horizon. Ahead, the land sloped toward a series of shallow gullies that led north. Cal stopped the wagon and listened. Nothing. No riders, no wagons. That worried him again. He turned to Eliza. "We cannot keep moving straight," he said. "They will expect that." She nodded. "What do we do?" "We disappear for a few hours," Cal said. "Make them doubt their own map." He guided the wagon down into a gully, following it until the sides closed in just enough to hide them from above. They stopped under a stand of scrub and waited. The waiting was worse than moving. Every sound felt important. Every bird felt like a signal. Eliza shifted, then winced. Cal noticed. He checked her leg. "Careful. Quick. Still clean," he said. She managed a small smile. "You say that like it is a rare thing." "It is," he replied. They shared a quiet moment then. The kind that does not ask for promises, just presence. It did not last. A sound reached them, faint but unmistakable. A wagon. Not close, but not far enough. Cal stiffened. "That is not Crowley," he said. "How do you know?" "Because Crowley would be louder by now." "This one wants to see." The sound grew clearer, then stopped. Footsteps followed, one set. Light. Measured. Cal stepped forward, putting himself between Eliza and the sound. A woman's voice came from the edge of the gully. "Cal Rourke." He blinked. That was unexpected. Mary Caldwell stepped into view, hands raised, face drawn tight with worry. "Mary," Cal said. "You should not be here." She let out a breath. "Neither should you." Her eyes moved to Eliza. "So this is her." Eliza straightened. "You have my paper," she said. Mary nodded. "Still safe, for now." Cal felt a mix of relief and dread. "They know where you live." "Mary," he said. "I know," she replied. "They came last night, asked questions." "Polite ones? That is worse." Mary stepped closer. "Crowley sent men. Not Pike, different sort. They were careful. They offered money. Then they offered protection. Then they hinted." Cal clenched his jaw. "And the paper?" Mary met his eyes. "That's why I left." She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded document, edges worn but intact. "I was bringing it to Edgar," she said, "but I heard what happened in town. Decided it was better to find you first." Cal took the paper, holding it like it could break. "This changes things," he said. Mary nodded. "It will make Crowley angry." Eliza exhaled. "Good." Mary gave her a thin smile. "Angry men stop pretending. Cal folded the document and slipped it into the satchel with the rest. He looked between the two women. "We move now," he said. "Together." Mary frowned. "Where?" "Fort Laramie." Mary nodded once. "Then we best hurry, because when Crowley realizes I'm gone, he will not ask questions anymore." They turned the wagon back into motion, the gully opening ahead of them like a narrow promise. Cal did not look back. He did not need to. He could feel it. The hunt had shifted, and this time, Crowley would not be testing them. He would be closing the distance. The road north tightened after that. Not in distance, in consequence. Cal kept the wagon moving at a pace that looked ordinary to anyone watching from far off, but every turn he chose carried memory behind it. This was not guesswork anymore. This was old instinct waking up. Mary sat on the bench behind them, quiet, hands folded in her lap, eyes sharp and taking in more than she let on. She had run a boarding place long enough to know when silence was safer than speech. Eliza sat beside Cal, the satchel tucked near her feet now. The weight of it felt even when she did not touch it. The paper inside changed everything. It always did. They traveled through open country first, where hiding made you look guilty, then cut into broken ground where the land itself did the lying for you. Cal did not speak much. When he did, it was practical. Water here, shade there, no stopping until the sun dipped. Mary finally broke the quiet. "Crowley will not send riders yet," she said. Cal nodded. "He will send stories." Eliza looked at her. "Stories." Mary smiled thin. "Men talking in places where we are not. Rail offices, post stops, telling folks what kind of girl runs with what kind of man." Eliza swallowed. Cal did not look at her, but his voice stayed steady. "That is why we do not stop in small towns," he said. "Small towns believe the first thing they hear." Mary leaned back. "And Crowley always makes sure his version arrives first." They crossed a shallow rise and stopped briefly to water the horses. Cal kept one hand on the reins the whole time. Mary noticed. "You expect trouble soon," she said. Cal nodded. "The closer we get to Fort Laramie, the fewer quiet options Crowley has." Eliza frowned. "That seems backward." Cal glanced at her. "Pressure does that. Men push hardest right before they lose control." They moved on again. The fort still a day away if the road stayed kind. Late afternoon brought heat and glare, the kind that wears you down without asking permission. Mary shifted on the bench. "They will come tonight or early morning," she said. "Not for the paper. For you." Cal did not argue. He had already reached the same conclusion. They stopped near a low ridge as the light softened. Choosing a place with sight lines in three directions and a narrow approach, Cal set the wagon just so. The horses calm, the wheels angled like they belonged. Eliza watched him work. "You have done this before," she said. Cal nodded once. "A long time ago." Mary studied him. "You were not always a rancher." "No," Cal said. That answer ended the questions. They ate sparingly. No fire, no lantern. Just bread and water and the sound of insects starting their evening work. As dusk settled, Cal stood and walked the perimeter, slow and quiet. He stopped at the ridge and looked back down the road. He did not like what he saw. A light. Not close. Not far. Moving. He came back without hurry. "They are there," he said. "How many?" Eliza asked. "Enough." Mary exhaled. "Do we run?" Cal shook his head. "We wait." That surprised both women. "Crowley expects us to run," Cal continued. "Running keeps us alone. Waiting makes noise." Mary tilted her head. "You want witnesses?" Cal nodded. "Even bad witnesses are better than none." The light on the road stopped. Another appeared, then another. 3 points, holding distance. They were patient. That made Eliza's chest tighten. Cal leaned against the wagon, arms folded. "Eyes on the dark. This is where he sends men like me," he said quietly. Mary looked at him. "What kind of men is that?" "The kind who talk first," Cal said, "and hurt later." As if summoned by the words, a voice carried up from the road. "Cal Rourke." It was not the man from the river. Different tone. Different confidence? Cal did not answer. The voice came again. No need to hide. We just want to talk. Mary shifted. They always do. Cal finally stepped forward into the open, far enough to be seen, not close enough to be reached. I'm listening, he called back. A figure stepped out of the dark, hands visible, posture easy. Another followed, then a third. No badges, no uniforms, just men who knew how to stand. Crowley wants this finished clean, the first man said. Cal smiled without warmth. Crowley wants a lot of things. The man shrugged. You have the paper now. That makes you dangerous. Cal tilted his head. Funny. I was dangerous before the paper. The man's smile faded. This ends tonight, he said. One way or another. Mary stiffened. Eliza felt her pulse in her throat. Cal stayed calm. Then you should have brought more men, he said. The man studied him, then glanced past him, eyes narrowing slightly. You think the fort will save you? Cal answered evenly. I think the truth travels faster when it has a road. Silence stretched. The men did not move closer. They had not planned on this either. Finally, the first man nodded. You will regret this, rancher. Cal held his ground. Probably. The men stepped back, melting into the dark, their lights dimming one by one. Mary let out a slow breath. They left. Cal shook his head. They measured us. That is worse, Eliza looked at him. What happens now? Cal stared into the dark where the road disappeared. Now Crowley decides whether to make this quiet or public. And when men like him choose public, he added, they bring rope instead of paper. Dawn did not come gentle. It came sharp and pale, cutting the dark away in strips, revealing the truth the night had been hiding. Cal was already on his feet when the first light hit the ridge. He had not slept. Men who expect trouble rarely do. Mary stirred first, then Eliza, both waking to the same stillness that pressed down on the land like a held breath. No birds yet. No wind. Just quiet stretched too tight. Cal scanned the road below. The lights from the night before were gone. That did not mean safety. That meant organization. We move now, Cal said. Mary nodded. Before they decide where to put the rope, Eliza felt her stomach turn at the word, but she did not look away. She had heard worse in quieter places. They hitched up fast, movements practiced now. The three of them working without talking, each knowing their part. The wagon rolled before the sun cleared the ridge, cutting north toward the fort road. Cal kept them moving through shallow ground where sound carried poorly and dust did not rise easy. For a while, it felt like they might slip through. That hope did not last. Mid-morning, they saw it. Ahead, where the road narrowed between two low rises, something stood that had not been there before. A wagon. Sideways. Blocking the path. Eliza's chest had tightened. Cal slowed but did not stop. He studied the scene like a man reading weather. Too neat. Too intentional. That is not for us, Mary said quietly. Cal shook his head. It is exactly for us. As they drew closer, figures stepped out from behind the wagon. 6 men, not hiding, not rushing. Standing loose, confident, like they owned the ground. One of them held a coil of rope. Another leaned on a rifle without shouldering it. The message was clear. This was not an ambush. It was a demonstration. Cal brought the wagon to a stop well short of them. He stayed seated a moment, then climbed down slow, careful, making no sudden choices. Eliza watched him, hands clenched tight in her lap. Do not speak, Mary whispered to her. Let him work. Cal stepped forward alone. Morning, he said. The man in front smiled thin. Morning, rancher. Crowley wants this settled. Cal nodded. Crowley wants many things. The man shrugged. Today he gets one of them. Cal glanced at the rope. That how he plans to settle it? The man followed his gaze, only if needed. Cal looked back at the men. You know Fort Laramie is close enough now that this will not stay quiet, he said. The man smiled wider. Crowley is counting on that. Eliza felt the blood drain from her face. Cal did not flinch. Then he wants a show, Cal said. The man did not deny it. People listen better when they are scared. Cal thought of Pike, of the paper with Crowley's name, of all the small lies that had led to this wide moment. He took one more step forward. You hang her out here, he said, and you make her a martyr. The man tilted his head. We hang you, rancher. She goes free. The words landed heavy. Mary stiffened behind the wagon. Eliza's breath caught, sharp and loud in her ears. Cal did not turn. He had expected this. Crowley always liked trades. I'm not your problem, Cal said. The man shrugged. Today you are. Cal exhaled slowly. Then this ends badly for you. The man laughed. You are outnumbered, Cal nodded. That has never been my measure. He stepped back toward the wagon. Mary shook her head slightly. Warning. Cal raised a hand. Calm. Not yet. He reached into the satchel and pulled out the folded documents. He did not wave them. He did not shout. He simply held them where the light could see. You kill me here, Cal said. These papers do not die. They walk. To clerks, to railmen, to judges who like to be seen doing the right thing when eyes are on them. The man hesitated. Just a beat. Just enough. Crowley's not afraid of paper, the man said. Cal smiled without humor. He should be, because paper does not bleed, and it does not forget. Silence stretched. The men shifted. Not much, but enough for Cal to see the doubt ripple. Behind him, Eliza leaned forward without thinking. Cal, she said. He didn't look back. I know. He raised his voice just enough to carry. You came out here to scare us, Cal said. To make this look like frontier justice. But frontier justice needs witnesses. And you picked the wrong road for that. The man frowned. What witnesses? Cal glanced past them. Down the road. The men followed his gaze. A shape moved there. Then another. Not riders. A wagon. Then a second. Slow. Ordinary. Farmers. Freight. People who would stop and stare. People who would talk later. The man cursed under his breath. Crowley had wanted a clean edge, and this was getting messy. Move. The man snapped to his crew. Now. The rope holder hesitated. Cal took advantage of it. He turned and spoke clearly, loud enough for the approaching wagons to hear. My name is Caleb Rourke, he said, and these men are trying to take a wounded girl by force. The road went very still. The approaching wagons slowed, heads turned, eyes narrowed. The man in front took a step back. You did this on purpose, he said. Cal nodded. Yes. The man stared at him, fury burning through calculation. This is not over. Cal held his ground. It never is. The men backed away, dragging the blocking wagon aside just enough to clear the road. They did not run. They withdrew, which meant they would return. Cal climbed back onto the wagon, hands steady despite the way his heart hammered. Eliza stared at him. You just painted a target on us. Cal met her eyes. No, he said. I moved it where people can see. The wagon rolled forward, passing through the gap, past the men who glared but did not act. As they cleared the rise, Mary let out a breath she had been holding since dawn. That was close, she said. Cal nodded. Too close. Eliza looked ahead, at the road, at the distant shape of Fort Laramie just beginning to show against the sky. Is this where it ends? She asked. Cal tightened the reins. No, he said. This is where Crowley stops pretending. And when men stop pretending, he added quietly, they usually choose one last, very public move. The road into Fort Laramie was louder than Cal expected. Not in noise, in meaning. Wheels creaked, boots struck dirt. Voices layered over each other like the town itself was breathing in after holding it too long. Cal guided the wagon through the gate slow and steady. Not because he was tired, but because rushing at the end of a hard road often ruins what the road was meant to teach you. Eliza sat beside him, back straight, eyes forward, no longer hiding behind the coat. Mary rode behind them, chin lifted like a woman who had decided she was done being quiet. No one stopped them, not because they were invisible. because sometimes the truth arrives looking ordinary and people do not recognize it until later. They found a clerk, then another, then a desk where paper mattered more than names. Cal laid the documents down one by one, not with anger, not with triumph, just with the calm of a man setting down tools after a long day. The ink spoke, the maps spoke. The false signatures did not argue back. Crowley did not show his face. He did not need to. Men like him prefer distance when the light gets too bright. By the time the sun slid west and the story had changed hands, it no longer belonged to Crowley. It no longer belonged to Pike. It belonged to records. And records have a way of outliving fear. Cal stood outside afterward, leaning against the wagon, feeling the ache in his bones catch up with him. Eliza stepped down and stood beside him, close enough to matter, far enough to choose. "It is over," she said. Cal looked out at the fort walls, at the flags stirring in the late light. "No," he said, "it is finished. Those are different things." She nodded. She had learned that difference the hard way. Mary came over and rested a hand on Cal's arm. "You did good," she said. Cal shook his head. "I did what I should have done a long time ago." They stood there a moment, three people who had crossed paths for reasons none of them planned. Then Mary left to speak with someone else, and Eliza turned to Cal. "What happens now?" she asked. Cal thought about his ranch, about quiet mornings, about the weight of not stepping aside. "Now you live," he said. "Not run, not hide, just live." She smiled. A real one this time. As they walked away from the fort, the land opened again, wide and honest, the same land that had tested them, the same land that had asked the question, "Who will you be when it costs you something?" And that is where I want to pause the story for a moment and speak to you directly. Because stories like this are not really about ranchers or outlaws or crooked men with paper. They are about that moment when you realize doing the right thing might make your life harder before it makes it better. I have learned something over the years, and maybe you have too. Most of us are not afraid of danger. We are afraid of being misunderstood. We are afraid of standing alone while other people decide who we are without asking. Cal could have stepped aside. He could have said it was not his problem. He could have protected his comfort instead of his conscience. And for a while, that would have worked. But comfort has a way of charging interest. It always comes back due. The lesson here is not be brave all the time. That is a young man's misunderstanding. The lesson is be honest when it matters. Be steady when others rush, and do not confuse peace with silence. Some of you listening right now are standing at your own version of that road. Not with wagons and rope, but with decisions, with family, with work, with the quiet knowledge that something is not right and pretending otherwise is starting to cost you sleep. Here's the question that matters. What are you avoiding because it feels easier today, even though you know it will hurt more tomorrow? Cal did not win because he was stronger. He won because he refused to let fear choose the story. Eliza did not survive because someone saved her. She survived because she chose to trust the right person at the right moment. And Mary mattered because she decided paper was worth protecting, even when people were not. That is how change actually happens. Not loudly, not all at once, but through small decisions made by tired people who still choose decency. I will share something personal with you. I've seen moments in my own life where staying quiet felt safer, where walking away would have kept things simple, and every time I did that, I paid for it later in ways I did not expect. Not with drama, with regret. And regret is heavier than any consequence of doing the right thing. So if this story stirred something in you, sit with that. Do not rush past it. Ask yourself, where have I been waiting for permission to be who I already know I am? Who am I protecting by staying silent? And what would change if I stopped stepping aside? If this story meant something to you, if it slowed you down or made you think, take a second and let me know by pressing the like button. It helps more than you might think, and it tells me to keep bringing you stories that respect your time and your experience. If you want more stories like this, Stories about choices and consequences and the quiet strength it takes to live right. Consider subscribing. And one last thing before we part. Look around wherever you are right now. Notice the hour. Notice the place. Life is happening there, not later, not someday. Right now. So, tell me in the comments, what time is it where you are? And what road are you standing on today?